Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us on the webinar today, delivering impactful programs using the MBTI framework. My name's Tom Leary. I'm a key account manager for the Myers-Briggs company, and I'll be co-hosting the webinar today. We want this to be an interactive session, so I'll be assisting with questions and comments throughout. We do, however, have a large number of attendees, so we will keep everyone on mute, but we encourage your participation by using the question box on your GoToWebinar side panel. For those of you who don't know who we are and what we do, the Myers-Briggs company is a mission-driven global organisation with a 60+ year history. Our mission is to inspire everyone to lead more successful and fulfilling lives. We're also certified as a benefit corporation or a B Corp. This means we look to balance our commercial goals alongside goals we have for employees, the community, and the environment. There are currently around 3,000 organisations, both large and small, that have been certified as B Corps. We think it's important and we encourage you to learn more about this for your own organisation. We work with organisations of all sizes and from all industry sectors to design and deliver developmental programs relating to teams, leadership, organisational development, coaching and selection. With our range of assessments, you can achieve multiple business objectives for the entire talent lifecycle, from selecting the right talent, developing your people to enhance performance, and supporting career transitions. Our presenter today is Dr. Martin Bolt, Senior Director of Professional Services and Psychologist at the Myers-Briggs company. Martin has extensive experience partnering with organisations across the Asia-Pacific region in areas of team effectiveness and executive leadership development, organisational change, virtual training solutions, workplace wellbeing, and resilience. Martin is also our lead assessment certification trainer, and during this webinar, Martin will take you through our MBTI playbook to show you how you can deliver impactful MBTI training. And with that, I'll turn you over to Martin.
Great, thanks Tom. And I've switched on my webcam, hopefully that's coming on, so just so everyone knows that I'm actually here and it's not an avatar or artificial intelligence working through the session with you today. I won't leave the camera on the whole time because that can be a bit distracting from the content, but maybe just to again welcome everyone to the session and to get everyone participating straight out of the block. So here's a question I'll ask everyone just to consider, but when you've got something to share, please put your thoughts into the questions box, as Tom was mentioning. And the question we have for you is, what are your current people development priorities? So what are the most important development areas or development issues your organization or your business is needing to address at present? So I'm going to give you a few moments to put your thoughts in there so that after we've got some of them, Tom will be able to share them with us. But maybe your key development priorities have something to do with the teams and making teams work more effectively. Or is it more about the leaders of your organization, helping them be effective in leadership? Some organizations might be trying to address issues relating to bridging communication differences or managing and negotiating conflict. Indeed, might be something to do with stress or resilience. So there's probably a wide range of possibilities there, but hopefully that's given some time for everyone to share and put some points together. So I might ask Tom, if you could just share with us what were the sort of topics or issues coming through that you've seen in the question box there.
Yeah, sure. We're getting quite a few responses here. So we've got ones on teams, emotional intelligence, culture, leadership, managing online teams, another one on leadership, conflict. I'd say teams is probably the #1 thing that I'm seeing come through here. Multicultural teams as well, and managing through change.
Excellent. Well, that's a very diverse range of issues, but I can also start to hear some themes. Maybe some of you can hear some of the themes that are coming through. So first of all, thanks for sharing. I'm going to switch off my camera so that we can focus in on where we're looking at today. But again, starting with some of the points you shared, We'll see how today's session might be able to give you some ideas or tips or insights into how you could use the MBTI as part of those development issues. So a quick overview of what we're going to look at in this session is we'll look at the importance of self-awareness and how that's useful for not only understanding our own preferences and how we like to do things, but also understanding the needs of others that we work with, particularly when we're trying to focus in on development issues. We're going to look at some pieces of the new MBTI playbook, which is really a guide put together to demonstrate how the MBTI assessment and framework provides a foundation for development. Now, the MBTI playbook is a free resource available for those of you who might be certified MBTI practitioners. But if you're new to the MBTI, you'll still get an insight into some of the activities, tips, and guidelines that the playbook offers, so that you have an awareness or an understanding of what the MBTI can be used for with respect to development. And then it might give you some ideas at the end of our session, or Tom will explain what might be some next steps for those who are interested in looking at what's involved with certification or using the MBTI in your business. So the starting point of any development is really understanding ourselves and what influences our behavior and our choices. This is where self-awareness is crucial. Some of you may be very familiar with a framework that's often used as part of learning and development for self-awareness, known as the Johari window, which was developed by psychologists and is now widely used by psychologists and HR and learning professionals as a way of helping people learn about what's the value of self-awareness and why it's important. I do remember the first time I saw the name or the Johari window, I thought that sounded very exotic. And what I learned later on was it was actually developed by two psychologists, Joe and Harry, hence Johari window. And it's a technique that helps people better understand their relationship with themselves and others. So in a very high level summary of it, you can see there are four main aspects to the window. The arena aspect are things that we know about ourselves and we share and others know about us. It's the public face of who we are. The facade part is things that we know about ourselves, but we don't openly share, or other people don't know that about us. These are important parts of ourselves that we like to keep as part of ourselves. When we look at the blind spot areas, these are things that others know about us or have observed in us, but we're not conscious of it or aware of it. And that can be one of the key areas where development can support and work to illuminate some of those blind spots. And then there is the unknown area. These are things about ourselves that we're not really aware of or conscious of, and nor are other people. And the unknown area can be a useful place, particularly in development, for identifying hidden potential. So when we're talking about self-awareness, an understanding of personality becomes very important. And by understanding personality, we better understand where our strengths lie, but also becoming aware of personality helps us know who we are and why we act the way we do. So we become clear about our potential, what might motivate us or inspire us, how people might communicate in different ways based on innate needs or preferences, or make decisions in different ways. Understanding personality helps us be clear about how we might produce our best work, and also how other people behave and why they behave that way. So personality is an important place to start when we're looking at development. Now, some of you today will be very familiar with or even using the MBTI personality framework. It's one of the most widely used personality theories and frameworks in development. If you're new to the MBTI, what it does offer is a practical and accessible way of understanding our personality and other people. So in brief, the MBTI measures 4 pairs of personality preferences, which when you put them together results in 16 broad personality types. So if I was to give an example, if a person had a preference for introversion, sensing, thinking, and judging, putting those 4 preferences together, they would result in the broad personality type of ISTJ. Now, what we do know about the 16 MBTI types is that all types have strengths and all types have potential blind spots or pitfalls. So it's a useful way of saying there is no better or worse personality type, but there are differences, real differences between people based on personality type. It's also a flexible model for development because we can use it to explore multiple workplace challenges, everything from negotiating around communication and conflict, through to helping leaders better understand who they're leading, and for teams, helping teams navigate working successfully with each other. So the MBTI playbook was put together to capture the latest ways of using the MBTI assessment and framework for development in the workplace. And just to give you a very quick overview of what it contains, it's quite a detailed guide that includes checklists to help the MBTI practitioner know how to prepare for sessions and things to explore with clients. There's a wide selection of activities to help address development challenges. There are links to extra development resources, hints and tips from MBTI experts who've been using it for development, and also some useful ways of being able to respond to common questions that arise from the MBTI. So what I thought I'd do with you in this session is give you some of those tips and activities, a sample of them that you'll find in the playbook. Now, before I start working with any client, be it a team or leadership group, and trying to tackle a development issue, the first thing I want to gauge with them is, are they in fact ready for the development? I think of this as a bit like a pilot doing a pre-flight check before they take off to ensure the journey will be positive for everyone. So here on screen are some of the questions or issues I like to check off with clients before we do the work. So what's expected from the development? What change do they want to see? Are people actually willing to learn and make changes, or are they kind of just saying they're not open to that at this point in time? Are people willing to respect and learn from each other, particularly if they're going to be learning in groups or teams? Does the leadership of the organisation support the development? Is there trust in co-workers, the facilitator of the development, and the process that's going through? And is there sufficient time to invest in development that's going to have an impact, as opposed to just doing development that may not land where it needs to? So these might be some questions to consider with the clients or with your colleagues when you're thinking about what development to undertake. And just to give a very quick example of the importance of ensuring people are using the MBTI correctly, when people are going through the MBTI process, it's not simply filling in the MBTI questionnaire itself. That's one element of it. So the way that the MBTI is appropriately used is people take the questionnaire. Before they see their results, they go through a feedback or an interactive feedback experience with a certified MBTI practitioner. And that's an important step where people not only learn about the MBTI framework, but have an opportunity to estimate their type before looking at the MBTI results. And the final step is each person who goes through the process uses that information from the feedback and the report to identify what their best fit type is. Now, we're very keen on making sure that the MBTI is used in a professional and ethical way. So just to some reminders, or for those who are new to the MBTI, this is what the MBTI can be used for appropriately and ethically. It's a development assessment. So essentially, it's designed to help people learn about themselves and others for development purposes. It doesn't measure skill or competence, but it does measure meaningful differences between people that can be used in understanding communication, differences, relationships, leadership, enhancing teams, and even helping people better manage their well-being and resilience. What the MBTI is not designed for and should never be used for is selection, recruitment, promotion or demotion or redundancy. It's not a test of competence, and it certainly is not designed to be used in a stereotyping way or for limiting people. So again, I often make these points pretty clear with clients before we use the MBTI. So one of the most common areas that we've been using or asked to support development with the MBTI is for leadership development. And what we do know is that effective leaders know when to use their strengths, and more importantly, what those strengths are, They know what their blind spots or potential biases are and how to manage that when they're in a leadership role. And they also have a way of understanding and working with the needs of the people that they're leading, their followers, and also responding to those needs, even if they are different to what the leader prefers. So how do we help leaders get clear about these things? So here's one example of an activity from the playbook that we use in leadership development programs. So this is once the leaders know what their personality type is, you can divide them into different type groups, depending on which issue or combination you're exploring. One way of dealing this is dividing participants into groups of the temperament preferences, which you can see are SJ, SP, NF, NT, or decision-making preferences, which include TJ, TP, FJ, FP. Although an approach I find really helpful is if you can group people in whole type groups. That is, they're meeting with people that they share the same 4 MBTI preferences with. And then what we ask them to do is to compile a leadership poster, which you can see the questions and the prompting points on the screen there. So when we ask them, when you're operating as a leader, what do you contribute? What might you overdo or overlook as a leader? What are some things that others do that annoy you when you're leading them? And also helping them work out what they need to be their best. Now, as an exercise, it's very powerful, but it also can be done in quite an easy time frame of about 30 minutes. So here's a sample of the kind of points that different types will share about their leadership style or approaches. And you can see here, we've got one type, the ISTJ leader group, who shared these kind of points about what they contribute as leaders, what they might overdo, and also what they need to be their best. Now, in comparing that, if you look at another group of leaders who had preferences for ENFP, you can see they too have key contributions, things that they might overdo or overlook, and also other things that help them be their best. Where it becomes really useful in a group learning environment with leaders is they get to hear of the different types and what they contribute, but what they may also overlook. And often when you've got type opposites like this in a session, you can actually see the strengths of one type can be the blind spots of the other type and vice versa. Another way of exploring leadership and followership with the MBTI is to look at the last 2 preferences of all the types. And you can see some descriptions of the typical behaviors and decision-making styles of these 4 type groups. And one example we had when we worked with an organization that asked us to come and help work with the senior leaders was based on a recent staff survey, where they actually found that staff were perceiving the leadership to not have a clear vision or not communicating that vision for the business. They actually said they were leading in not very inspiring way and found some of the leadership decisions quite harsh. So when we took the executive team through the MBTI to learn about their types, what we discovered is the vast majority had preferences for thinking and judging, TJ. So you can see that their natural way of making decisions is to be logical decision makers. As part of the development, staff were also invited to undertake the MBTI, and they learnt about their types. And we were able to collate the different type preferences at different levels of the organisation. What we found is the majority of people in that organisation at the staff level had preferences for FP or FJ. Now, if you look at the descriptions of the typical behaviours of those types, they're almost opposite to the TJs. So what that helped the executives understand is what they would naturally offer, but how they might need to adjust their style to meet the needs of their followers. It also helps staff better understand why their senior leaders were making decisions in the way that they were. Now, assessment without action or development action, though, is an interesting exercise, but may not gain the development that an organisation or an individual wants to achieve. So keep in mind that assessments are the starting point of behavioural change. For real change to occur, both the participants and the organisation need to be ready to invest in development actions that flow from the assessment learning. This could include formal leadership programs, coaching, team workshops, And what I find really important is to encourage people to say, with your learning, how can you apply that to something that you're currently working on in your job now, like a job assignment? When those development actions are added in beyond just learning about personality type, that's when we see sustainable change. So another example is to look at how do we use the MBTI for a team development focus. What we do know is effective teams establish trust between the members, and the MBTI is one method of building a foundation of trust. It allows team members to explore individual personality profiles and build an increased understanding or shared understanding of how their different preferences might influence or impact on the behavior of the team. It can also highlight for teams where their collective strengths are, but also what might be their collective blind spots, what they overlook. And there are a wide range of exercises you can use with teams based on the MBTI model to help them be more effective, in particular, learning how to flex or adapt their behavior to work effectively within their team. So an example that we provide in the playbook around team development is when team members know their types and they're invited to share them by indicating their type on the 16 type table. And here you can see on screen the kind of questions we might guide a team through to help them explore what do their type preferences mean for how they work together as a team. So you can see a team starts to pinpoint where their natural strengths might be, but also potential weaknesses. You can also look to see are the types evenly represented or some types more prominent and others less represented. And what I find this exercise does is allow the team to talk in very constructive terms about difference and how to put some actions together. So this is an example of a manufacturing team that actually requested help dealing with tension and conflict that had been arising from what they considered to be quite a diverse team. They were diverse both culturally, in age, and technical backgrounds. And many of the team members were quite wary of wanting to explore or unpack what they said were touchy-feely issues in the team. Now, when we gained agreement that they did want to undertake development with the MBTI, when they shared their types, you can see on the type table, each of the blue icons represents a member of the team. And whilst they had a range of different types in their team, there was clearly a majority set of preferences. The majority of the team had preferences for sensing and thinking, which is really a preference for making very practical, logical decisions. As a team with majority ISTJ preferences, they were known for being very practical and efficient. But what they were in fact overlooking were new and different ways of solving problems, the innovative thinking, and also the inclusion and collaboration piece. And this is where members of the team who had opposite preferences, including intuition and feeling, NNF, were potentially being overlooked, but now they found a way of contributing to decision making. So with that knowledge, the team were able to make very practical and tangible changes to how they worked with each other. And you can see here from one of the bits of feedback from the team member, by going through the MBTI, it's identified that it had really established a greater level of trust and an understanding of how to better work with each other, which translated into them being an even more effective and efficient team. So when working with teams, it can be really useful to give them some takeaway questions to explore and further put in place when they're working with each other. And again, here are some typical actions or questions that I use with my clients to help them not only make decisions about individually, what am I going to do with this knowledge and to share that with the team, but also then to have the team identify what those strengths are and how does that support the purpose of their work, what might be their blind spots and how that might hinder their purpose, and to really encourage them to come up with a maximum of 2 or 3 team level actions that they all agree to. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a look into the ways you can apply the MBTI in a team development setting. And as we mentioned at the beginning of our webinar, there are many other applications that the MBTI can be used for as a pathway for continuous development. For example, the MBTI can be used for focusing on communication differences, decision making, managing change, helping people better understand and manage stress and build resilience, and also navigating conflict. So all those topics, tips and activities are provided in the MBTI playbook, and I'm hoping that's given you a taste or a bit of an insight into the different ways the MBTI can be used for some of the more common development challenges or development needs that we're seeing with organisations today. So on that note, I'll actually hand back to Tom, who's got some other things to share with you. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Martin. I would like to share some possible next steps for those of you who have joined us on the webinar today. Just before I do, though, we've had quite a few questions come through regarding getting access to the slides and getting access to the recording. And just to let everyone know, we will be sharing that information with you after the webinar. So in the next day or so, you will receive the recording and also the notes. But if you want to move on to the next slide, Martin. So as Martin mentioned earlier on the webinar, all MBTI practitioners do have access to the MBTI playbook, and all MBTI practitioners who are on the webinar today will receive a free copy of the playbook. So it contains tips, best practices, recommended activities, and links to further resources for the most requested development areas, such as communication, leadership, decision-making, managing change, stress and resilience, conflict management, and team development. But for everyone on the webinar, I will now quickly share a few offerings for using the MBTI assessment, and these are also highlighted on our website. So the link on the top of the slide is available if you want to investigate that further. But the first option for using the MBTI is to become an accredited MBTI practitioner, and this will allow you to assess personality differences and provide you with practical tools to improve communication, develop leaders, manage stress, and help teams across your organisation work better together. We have a number of certification programs remaining in 2021, and we do have both virtual and classroom offerings. So you can view the available dates on the screen, and if this is of interest to you, please reach out for further information. And we can also run in-house programs. So again, this can be done in a virtual or classroom situation, and it's available for organisations who have 6 or more people they're wanting to get accredited in the MBTI, and we'll work with you to find a date that suits. The next option for incorporating the MBTI is to use the MBTI Essentials virtual workshop. That's a great way to bring in one of our expert consultants to use the MBTI with your teams. And the MBTI Essentials workshops are short, focused virtual workshops that can keep your remote employees engaged through personality insights and practical application. During the workshop, each participant receives group feedback from our expert consultants so they can find out their own Myers-Briggs personality type. And we also have options for additional workshops that use the MBTI lens to focus on a particular application area, and those options are on the screen. So you'd use the MBTI to enhance communication or to manage change or build resilience. And finally, we understand that each organisation faces their own unique challenges, so we can work with you to develop a customised training solution that will meet your needs. Please reach out if you want to schedule a free consultation to discuss this option. And finally, we'll look to some questions. So thank you to everyone who has submitted questions during the webinar. We probably don't have time to get through all of them now, but we will follow up individually with anyone who has placed a question and respond to that. But Martin, the first question I've got for you is, are there times when you wouldn't use a personality assessment in team development?
Yeah, okay, really good question. So the first thing I think for all of us to keep in mind is that an assessment is probably not a panacea for solving every issue or challenge that presents in a team. So the MBTI is very helpful for that, but what I would say is before you embark on using the MBTI with the team, using some of those pre-flight checklist questions that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the webinar is a good way of saying, is the team ready for working and learning with each other? If a team, for example, has such levels of conflict that they're not even comfortable speaking with each other or being in the same room, then that would not be the appropriate time to use not just the MBTI, but any development tool. And there's probably a need to do something more around mediation rather than development. But once things are mediated, then it can be very powerful to help with team development. So that's a good question.
Great. Thanks for your insights there, Martin. I'll just squeeze one last question in. Can the MBTI be used for online or virtual training?
Yes, really good question, especially in our current situation where people are doing a lot more remote work. So we have for quite some time been doing more a combination of virtual and in-person work. Clearly in the last 18 months, we switched all to virtually, but we're actually starting to see people coming back requesting more in-person work, which I think adds to the learning that you might cover virtually. So yes, all the activities that I was talking about today and in the MBTI playbook, there's tips of how you might facilitate them with in-person sessions in a room together, as well as running it virtually. It seems to work very well in both circumstances. So hopefully that helps, Tom.
Martin. Yeah, thank you. That's great. And if anyone does have any questions about our MBTI training solutions, please reach out. But we are out of time now, so just wanted to thank you all for attending the webinar today, and a reminder that we will send the recording and the notes with you shortly. So thank you.